Imagine this. It's a perfectly normal, sunny day in your hometown. All of a sudden, the ground starts shaking violently. You're knocked off your feet, buildings are shaking, and even cars are visibly moving. Furniture is flying around your room, and pictures are falling off the wall. Then, suddenly, the shaking stops, leaving you to assess the damage. You've just experienced what's called an earthquake. That is, what Earth does when it's feeling angry. Now, before we get into what causes earthquakes and why they can be so dangerous, I would appreciate you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay tuned for future content. Okay, so what exactly are earthquakes? Well, simply put, earthquakes are the ground shaking after a tremendous amount of energy is released. But what causes this energy to be released? Is it an explosion? The moon's gravity? Nope. I bet most of you know about tectonic plates. You know, the giant pieces of Earth's crust that essentially float on the mantle? They're most well known for creating mountains and valleys, but they are huge drivers of earthquakes. You see, normally the plates float around unimpeded, but they are usually at the rate of a few inches per year. As a result, you can probably expect your local beach to move about a few feet during your lifetime. However, sometimes the plates can get stuck. This is especially problematic with transform boundaries. That is, plates that grind past each other. When they get stuck, a massive amount of energy is built up from the natural movement of the plates. However, they can't be stuck forever, and when they get unstuck, all of that energy is released, causing the ground to violently shake. Think of it as trying to pull two things apart from each other. You pull harder and harder, trying to separate the two objects. Eventually, they're separated, and all that energy snaps back into your arms, catching you by surprise. Earthquakes work a little bit like that. So, where on earth do earthquakes happen most frequently? Well, you've probably heard of Los Angeles or San Francisco being worrisome locations for a potential major earthquake. This is because both cities lie along the San Andreas Fault, which is a transform boundary between the Pacific and North American tectonic plates. Scientists have said that the fault line has the potential to induce earthquakes as strong as magnitude 8, about the same strength as the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, which killed several thousand people and caused fires that pretty much leveled the city. The Pacific Ocean as a whole is a pretty huge magnet for earthquakes. In fact, there is a geological formation called the Ring of Fire, which roughly follows the boundary of the Pacific Plate, from Indonesia to Japan to Alaska to California to Chile. Another spot where earthquakes happen are underneath volcanoes, as the massive amounts of magma under them can cause the ground to shake. A big example of this was in 2018 when a 6.9 magnitude earthquake happened under Kilauea in Hawaii, despite the volcano being under no major fault lines. This turned out to be the precursor to a huge eruption of said volcano that destroyed hundreds of homes. In fact, scientists consider increased earthquake activity to be signs of an impending eruption. But exactly how dangerous are earthquakes? Well, it depends on the intensity. A magnitude 1 earthquake can typically be registered only on seismographs, while a magnitude 9 earthquake can cause massive deaths and destruction. It also depends on infrastructure. Some earthquake-prone cities have made so their buildings are designed to sway during an earthquake. It's scary, but it helps dissipate the energy and prevents the building from collapsing. But the shaking isn't the only danger. If the earthquake happens in or near an ocean, then a tsunami can form. Tsunamis are a whole other disaster that I can cover in a future video, but suffice to say, they are huge walls of water that, when they crash into a shoreline, can flood entire cities. A big example of this deadly combo was in Japan in 2011. That year, a magnitude 9 earthquake struck 80 miles off the country's east coast. This was bad enough, but the earthquake spawned one of the deadliest tsunamis in modern history, killing over 16,000 people. It even caused a nuclear plant to melt down. Thankfully, Japan is a country that deals with earthquakes all the time, so the disaster could have been much, much worse. However, if you live in Japan or some other earthquake-prone area, it's always good to have a plan for what to do when such a quake strikes. This could involve running to a basement when they're shaking, getting down from high buildings, or staying away from windows that could break. And that wraps up this video about earthquakes. As always, I'd appreciate like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay tuned for future content. Thanks and have a great rest of your day.